So I'm going to be casting this Lego block pendant and my custom starship here. Now I'm starting off by clipping off the support beams that are used during the 3D printing process and giving this a nice sand to get these pieces prepared. Now here I am welding them on with wax to a sprue, and this is actually going to be encased in a plaster, getting ready for the casting process. Now I like to take a little wax and thicken up the base area where the wax is attached to the sprue, and that's basically making a nice thick area for the metal to pour into the cavern where the pendants are going to be seated. And this entire piece that I'm holding in my hand is actually going to be melted out in the kiln, and there's going to be a void left inside of the plaster for the metal to actually be poured down into. And I just go in here, and you want to heat up and remove any bumpy areas so it's a nice smooth transition. So there's the sprue in the rubber, and what I'm going to do now is I'm going to mix up the plaster and vacuum chamber the bubbles out, and I'm going to be adding that, as you can see here, to the flask, and those pendants are on that sprue attached to the base of the flask inside of a piece of rubber. So I've removed the rubber. You can see the little piece of wax that's the tip of the sprue, and here's my homemade kiln that I made out of an old fireplace, and I'm just adding this inside to cook out for a burn cycle, which is going to remove the wax, and it's actually going to cure the plaster and remove any unneeded moisture. So I have my crucible here, and I need to actually re-glaze it, which creates a little thin barrier actually, so that the metal doesn't stick to the crucible here. So I'm preheating it, and now I'm adding some aggressive heat, and once I'm done that, I'm actually just going to add some borax, which is a natural laundry detergent, and it's actually going to make a nice film, and it's going to be used to make sure that the metal doesn't actually bond. And here I am just ensuring that it gets to all areas. So I just added the silver grain that I've actually pre-weighed into the crucible, and this plaster is actually 600 degrees Celsius as I'm adding it into the vacuum chamber there. So we're just heating up the metal, and we're going to get ready to do the pour. And right now I actually have the vacuum chamber on, so that what happens is once this pour happens, there's going to be any excess air removed from the metal to ensure we don't have any air bubbles inside of the castings. So I drop that in. I actually throw my crucible inside of the kiln, and here we are adding the flask to a bucket of water. So there is how it turned out, and the casting was successful. Now it looks a little rough, but that's a little bit of porosity and things that happen during casting. So here I am just removing the pendants from the sprue, and then I'm going to be able to take them down, file them down, and sand them and do a proper polish. So there is the pendants, and then I'm going to take them down to the basement, and I'm going to start off by dremeling out the hole where the chain is going to sit. Now there was a hole there, but sometimes it doesn't fully work during the plaster, and there's a little bit of metal caught inside. Now here I am throwing the discs on the jewel tool. I was just showing how you change those. And this is actually going to be used to remove debris from the metal and remove scaling and porosity. So I've removed a lot of the porosity here, which is the pitting and the silver on the back. And I'm going to move on to my bristle brush here. And that's going to go into these areas in between these little cylindrical towers, I guess you'd call them, for the Lego block, and we're going to get that roughed in and move on to our polishing wheels. Alright, so once these are actually cast, it's a little bit of a jump back and forth between my Dremel and my jewel tool. And the main idea is I need to actually Dremel out the holes that I've designed in the 3D animation. And sometimes the 3D plasters are not as accurate in the sense of they don't get 100% of the design. They're about, let's say, 97% there. So I can actually see the indentations on the back where the holes should be, and I'm going to use those as my guide for where I'm going to punch them out. And the main hole through the side of the bail here, where you're actually going to hang your chain, I don't know, maybe 80% of the hole is there, so I need to finish that out. And with the jewel tool, I actually have this special disc here that's specifically designed for porosity. And the idea is it doesn't actually grind the metal down. What it does is it heats the metal and moves the metal to smooth over those holes and pitting. And it's pretty impressive actually how this works. Dremeline's going well. I got 2 out of the 3 holes figured out. So just working on that now, and then I'm going to be able to get onto the jewel tool, and we're going to be able to get these scratches and imperfections with porosity removed. So I got most of the porosity removed here. And now I'm actually going to focus in on the interior of where these gems are actually going to be seated. And we're going to use these little wheels here. I'm going to show you guys what it looks like finished up. And the gems aren't set, they're going to be bezel set, meaning that the perimeter of the metal is actually going to be crushed around the stones. Thanks for tuning in. Remember, the Cold Find shirts are available on my website, coldfind.glass. I'll leave a link in the description. And if you guys are interested, subscribe to the channel.